A question that's come up a number of times is whether or not, or how long, a small mini fridge would run off of a deep cell battery. So I looked at a number of forums for a couple of years to try to figure out how I could make it work with my teardrop, and eventually, after reading all the different comments by the electrical engineers and everyone's theoretical physics of how it would work, I decided just to try it out to see is it possible and how long it would last for. So what I've done here is I just have a small mini fridge, which I picked up at Walmart for about, I think, 70, 80 bucks, something along those lines. And it was filled here with a bunch of drinks. And I have a small power inverter from Harbor Freight. I think it's a 400 watt continuous 700 watt peak. Seems to run things just fine. I have a deep cell battery here. And I do have a charger maintainer that really wasn't part of running the refrigerator. But what I did is I turned it on, let it run, just to see how long it would go until it wouldn't go anymore. So it ran for 26 hours. And then I think the voltage got low enough in the battery where the power inverter wouldn't kick on. So when I tested the battery, it still had about 44% of its battery life. So a lot of comments were just talking about, don't run your battery below 50% or 80% because you'll kill it. So a test that I did this is my second year running this system, and it doesn't seem to be that big of a problem. I'm sure I'll probably wear out the deep cell a little bit faster than normal, but I probably use the camper for about a 2-week vacation stretch and a few weekends here and there throughout the summer. So the deep cell seems to work just fine. Last summer I used it on a trip for 2 weeks and drained it pretty continuously and charged it up when I'd hit a campground at night, and didn't seem to be too big of a problem. So the temperatures that we're operating with, when driving down the interstate, thermometer's reading about 115 degrees within the compartment of the galley, so it gets pretty warm with that sun radiating off of the aluminum. So the question that came up was, how much space do you need around the mini fridge? Well, you can tell I don't have a ton of space. It does get warm. I think all mini fridges do. Even if you go check one that you have in your house, the sides of them get warm to dissipate the heat. So I've got about 1.5 to 2 inches on each side and on the top of the mini fridge. It is pressed almost all the way up against the back of the galley in order for it to fit here in the space that I have, and it seems to run just fine. If I'm camping somewhere like in Yellowstone where it gets down to 45 degrees at night, and the teardrop galley is closed, if I pop that open in the middle of the night to get something out, I do notice that the fridge does warm up the galley space a few degrees, so I don't get any condensation or anything in the galley. It's not that significantly warm, but the fridge does put off some heat. So I guess one of the bigger questions that does come up is is it even possible? Yep, it's possible. It runs. I think actually I get more length of time out of the mini fridge when I'm running, because I do have a 7-pin on my truck, which charges the battery as I'm traveling down the interstate. And what I do notice is that charge, which is another question, is can it be enough to run electronics in your camper as you're driving? I think there's enough length of line from the front of my truck to the back of the camper here where it's enough to charge the battery, but not enough to keep up with the pull from the mini fridge. So it helps, but it over time, if it was only running off of the truck and the deep cell, probably I'd say 3-4 days time, the battery would end up kind of conking out. So I guess this was a real world test. Altogether, I think I have about 160 bucks in the whole system, which is a lot cheaper than buying an RV fridge. And also, if you add up how much ice costs, if you head out for a couple weeks a year like I do, I used to spend probably 40-50 bucks in ice over 2 weeks or so, 2.5 weeks, filling up a cooler all the time. Plus inevitably my food would get water in it and just all those things. So looks like it's possible to run it at least for a day with no charging, And right now what I'm doing is I was just kind of curious if I were able to plug in my battery charger here while the refrigerator is pulling off that deep cell. Is it enough to keep things running? And it is. And so this is a 15 amp charger that I picked up at Walmart. It's a smart charger, so it will charge up the battery and then maintain it once it's fully charged. So I don't know. Guess that's all I have to say about whether this works or not. Hopefully you enjoyed the video.